Captain Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and watched the alien faces around the massive circular table. The Galactic Council chamber stretched high above him with walls that sparkled like diamonds. Every species in the galaxy had a representative here, except humans only got one seat at this table that held 50 others. Jake had been coming to these meetings for 5 years now. 5 long years of listening to aliens talk about humanity like they were not even in the room. Today felt different, though. Today, Admiral Lisa Barnes sat beside him with a face carved from stone. She had flown here from Earth with new orders, and Jake could feel the tension rolling off her like heat from a star. The Zalani ambassador Karthek raised one of his crystal arms, and the room fell silent. His body looked like living glass that caught the light and threw rainbows across the chamber walls. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "We gather today to discuss the human request for equal representation in council decisions," Karthek said. "Humans have served the galaxy well as soldiers and enforcers for 30 years. However, they lack the evolutionary sophistication needed for true leadership roles." Jake felt his jaw clench but kept his face blank. 30 years of human blood spilled across a dozen star systems. 30 years of humans dying to keep the peace while aliens argued in safe chambers like this one. Admiral Barnes placed a hand on his arm and he forced himself to relax. The Vorthon representative stood next. General Techmore had 3 heads that moved independently of each other. His species looked like giant lizards that had learned to walk upright and wear military uniforms. All 3 heads nodded in agreement with the Zalani. "The Vorthon Empire concurs," Techmore said through his center mouth while his other 2 heads scanned the room. "Humans excel at following orders and fighting battles. These are valuable traits for a client species. Leadership requires wisdom that comes only with evolution spanning millions of years." Jake almost laughed at that. The Vorthons had been conquered by 3 different species before humans arrived and helped them regain their freedom. Now they talked about evolutionary wisdom while sitting in chairs humans had died to secure for them. The aquatic Mirdan delegate spoke next from her water-filled tank. Ambassador Sulvara's voice bubbled through the translation unit, mounted on her tank's surface. Blue-green scales covered her body, and gills fluttered along her neck as she breathed the oxygenated water. "The Mirdan Collective agrees with our esteemed colleagues," Sulvara bubbled. "Humans serve an important function as the galaxy's military arm. However, their aggressive nature and short lifespans make them unsuitable for long-term governance. They think in terms of decades while we plan for millennia." More voices joined the chorus. The insectoid Kethvar clicked their agreement through mandibles that could bite through steel. The energy beings known as the Luminari pulsed with colors that meant approval. Even the machine collective called the Synthesis added their cold electronic voice to the growing consensus. Species after species stood to explain why humans were useful but not worthy of true partnership. Jake listened to them describe his people like trained animals that had learned impressive tricks. They praised human courage and determination while voting to keep humans in their place as hired soldiers. Admiral Barnes had not moved during the entire debate. She sat like a statue carved from ice and watched each speaker with eyes that missed nothing. Jake had served under her for 8 years and knew that stillness meant she was planning something that would shake the galaxy. The final vote came as no surprise. 49 alien species voted to deny humanity's request for equal representation. Only Earth's single delegate voted in favor. The motion failed by the widest margin in Council history. Karthek's crystal body chimed with satisfaction as he announced the result. "The motion is denied. Humanity shall continue to serve the galaxy in their current capacity as military contractors. This arrangement has worked well for 3 decades and shall continue for 3 more. Admiral Barnes stood slowly and every eye in the chamber turned toward her. She was not a tall woman, but something in her posture made her seem to tower over the alien delegates around her. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber without any need for amplification. 30 years ago, humanity joined the Galactic Council as junior partners, she said. We accepted that position because we believed partnership could grow into equality through service and sacrifice. Today you have made it clear that no amount of service will ever be enough. She reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small device that Jake recognized as a quantum communicator. Her thumb hovered over the activation switch while 49 alien species watched in growing confusion. Humanity requested a seat at this table as equals, Admiral Barnes continued. You have voted to keep us beneath it as servants very well. The choice is yours and the consequences will be yours as, well. Her thumb pressed down on the communicator, and Jake heard the soft beep that meant a message had been transmitted across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds. Admiral Barnes placed the device back in her pocket and looked around the chamber one final time. Effective immediately, all human military forces are withdrawn from Council territories, she announced. All human diplomatic personnel will return to Earth within 72 hours. All human technical support and logistics operations will cease by the end of this week. The chamber erupted in confused voices as alien delegates tried to understand what they were hearing. Karthek's crystal body flashed through angry red colors as he called for order. "Admiral Barnes, you cannot be serious," he said. "The galaxy depends on human military support. This decision affects billions of beings across hundreds of worlds." Admiral Barnes smiled, and Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen that smile before on battlefields where the enemy had just made a fatal mistake. "Ambassador Karthek, you just voted that humans are unfit for important decisions," she replied. "Surely beings with millions of years of evolutionary wisdom can handle their own problems without help from an inferior species." She turned and walked toward the chamber exit with Jake close behind her. No one tried to stop them, but Jake could feel 49 pairs of alien eyes burning into his back. At the doorway, Admiral Barnes paused and looked back at the council one final time. "You wanted soldiers, not partners," she said. "Now you have neither." The massive doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder, and Jake Morrison knew that everything had changed forever. The age of human service to an ungrateful galaxy was over. What came next would be up to the aliens who had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 6 months had passed since Admiral Barnes walked out of the council chamber, and the galaxy was learning what silence meant. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the Luna Research Station and watched Earth turn slowly below her. The blue and white marble looked peaceful from this distance, but Elena knew that every human facility across the galaxy was now empty and heading home. The withdrawal had been swift and complete. Within 72 hours, every human diplomat had left their posts. Within a week, every human soldier had boarded transport ships bound for Sol System. The massive logistics network that humanity had built over 30 years simply vanished overnight like morning. Mist under a rising sun, Elena turned from the viewport and walked to her laboratory where holographic displays showed the current state of galactic affairs. As the former head of the Human Colonial Research Division, she had spent decades studying alien societies and their interactions. Now she watched those same societies try to function without the human foundation they had taken for granted. The first cracks had appeared within days of the withdrawal. A mining dispute between the Kethvar and the Hisan had erupted into open warfare in the Kepler sector. Both species claimed ownership of a rich asteroid field that contained rare metals needed for starship construction. Before the withdrawal, a single human diplomatic team would have mediated the dispute in 48 hours. Now it had been raging for 3 months with no resolution in sight. Elena pulled up another display that showed shipping routes across the galaxy. Red lines marked disrupted trade lanes where pirates had begun attacking merchant vessels. The Outer Rim territories had become hunting grounds for raiders who knew that no human patrol ships would respond to distress calls anymore. Insurance rates for cargo shipments had tripled in 6 months, and some trade routes had been abandoned entirely. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Phillips materialized on the holographic communicator, looking tired and frustrated. He was stationed at the monitoring post on Titan, where human intelligence services tracked galactic communications. The dark circles under his eyes told Elena that the news would not be good. "The situation is getting worse every day, Doctor," Ryan reported. "We intercepted 47 distress calls in the last 24 hours alone. Merchant ships under attack, colonies requesting evacuation, entire systems going dark. The Council is holding emergency sessions, but no one wants to commit their own forces to help strangers." Elena nodded and pulled up a tactical display that showed the current position of all major galactic fleets. The Zalani had recalled their ships to protect their core worlds. The Vorthan Empire was dealing with rebellions in 3 systems that had declared independence. The Murdan Collective had withdrawn to their oceanic homeworlds and refused to answer any communications from other species. "What about the Korath hegemony?" Elena asked, though she already suspected the answer. Ryan's expression darkened. "They're expanding again. Warlord Gethkar has taken 2 more systems in the last month. His forces are moving toward the neutral zone and there's no one to stop them. The council sent a strongly worded diplomatic protest that Gethkar used to light his victory fires. Elena had feared this development. The Korath were a militaristic species that humanity had kept in check for 20 years through a combination of military pressure and diplomatic isolation. With human forces gone, the Korath saw opportunity written in the stars and they were seizing it with both clawed hands. General Carl Murphy appeared on another communication channel from the Mars Defense Command. His weathered face showed the strain of watching a galaxy tear itself apart, while humanity remained safely isolated in Sol system. Murphy had fought in the Korath border wars 15 years ago, and knew better than most what that species was capable of when left unchecked. The requests for help are getting more desperate, Murphy reported. The Yolani sent another plea this morning begging us to escort their trade convoys. 3 of their merchant ships were destroyed last week by raiders who used to be afraid of human retaliation. Now they know we won't come. Elena pulled up files on the Yolani and felt a pang of sympathy. They were a gentle species of traders and artists who had never developed significant military capabilities. For 30 years they had relied on human protection to conduct their peaceful business across the galaxy. Now they were defenseless prey in an increasingly dangerous universe. Any word from the council itself? Elena asked. Murphy's laugh contained no humor. Ambassador Karthek sends weekly messages demanding that we honor our old agreements and return to active duty. He seems to think the withdrawal was just a negotiating tactic that got out of hand. The Vorthan are offering us increased pay rates if we'll take back our peacekeeping duties. And our response? Admiral Barnes deletes every message without reading it. She says the council made their choice and now they get to live with the consequences. Elena understood the Admiral's position, but she also understood the broader implications of galactic collapse. If civilization broke down completely, the chaos would eventually reach human space. Earth could not remain isolated forever while the galaxy burned around them. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council struggled to maintain order in their own meeting chambers. Emergency sessions had become shouting matches as different species blamed each other for the crisis. The Zilani accused the Vorthons of weakness. The Vorthons blamed the Meridan for isolationism. Everyone pointed fingers while actual solutions remained as distant as the nearest star. Elena watched intelligence reports stream across her displays and saw the pattern emerging. Species that had coexisted peacefully for centuries were now viewing each other with suspicion and fear. Trade agreements were being broken. Defensive alliances were crumbling. The careful diplomatic balance that had maintained galactic peace was collapsing without the human military to enforce it. The irony was bitter and complete. The aliens had voted that humans were unfit for leadership because they were too aggressive and militaristic. Now those same aliens were discovering that sometimes aggression and military force were the only things that kept peace between civilized worlds. A priority message appeared on Elena's main display marked with Skaven encryption codes. The Skaven were a patient reptilian species known for their long-term thinking and careful planning. If they were reaching out to humanity, it meant the situation was truly desperate. Elena decoded the message and read it twice before believing what she saw. The Skaven were offering to support human readmission to the Council with full voting rights if humanity would consider returning to active peacekeeping duties. It was exactly what Admiral Barnes had asked for 6 months ago. Elena saved the message to a secure file and marked it for Admiral Barnes to review. She had a feeling it would join all the other pleas and offers in the electronic trash bin, where human mercy had gone to die. The galaxy had made its choice, and Admiral Barnes intended to make them live with every consequence of that decision. Outside the laboratory windows, Earth continued its ancient rotation while across the galaxy civilization slowly crumbled. The age of human protection was over and the age of galactic chaos had begun. 1 year after humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, the galaxy was burning, and Commander Alex Turner could see the flames from his position aboard the Earth Defense Platform Omega. The massive space station orbited Earth at the edge of the solar system where it monitored all communications flowing between the stars. Alex had spent the last 12 months watching civilization collapse through intercepted transmissions and intelligence reports that painted a picture darker than the void between galaxies. The latest reports made for grim reading. The Korath hegemony had expanded their territory to include 15 star systems and showed no signs of slowing their conquest. Warlord Gethkar had declared himself Emperor of the Eastern Spiral, and his forces were moving toward the core worlds where the oldest civilizations in the galaxy made their homes. Every species that had voted to deny humanity equal representation was now learning what it meant to face a real enemy without human protection. Alex pulled up the tactical display that showed Korath fleet movements across the galaxy. Red icons marked enemy positions while yellow showed contested space, and green indicated the few remaining free territories. The map looked like a disease spreading through healthy tissue as Korath forces consumed world after world. What made it worse was that many of their weapons and ship designs had been reverse-engineered from captured council vessels that humans had originally provided for defense. The irony burned like acid in Alex's throat. Humans had armed the council fleets to protect innocent worlds from exactly this kind of aggression. Now those same weapons were being used by the Korath to destroy the civilizations that humans had died to protect. The galaxy was being conquered, with human technology by an enemy that human forces could have stopped in a matter of weeks. A priority transmission came through from the industrial world of Kepler 442b, where engineer Maria Santos was overseeing the dismantling of the massive stellar forge. The forge was humanity's greatest gift to galactic civilization, a space station capable of repairing any ship regardless of its origin or technology. For 30 years, it had served as a neutral facility where even enemies could bring damaged vessels for repair. Now it was being stripped down and shipped back to Earth piece by piece. Maria's face appeared on the communication screen, looking tired and frustrated. Behind her, Alex could see massive cargo ships loading sections of the forge into their holds, while human workers cut away 30 years of construction with plasma torches. The sight was both magnificent and heartbreaking, as one of the wonders of the galaxy was reduced to scrap metal and spare parts. "We'll have the main reactor core removed by tomorrow," Maria reported. "The quantum fabrication units are already on their way to Mars, and the gravitational field generators will be shipped to Luna Base next week. Within a month, there won't be anything left here but empty space and bad memories." Alex nodded and made notes in his log. The stellar forge had been completely funded and built by human resources, but it had served every species in the galaxy without discrimination. Wounded Zalani ships had been repaired alongside damaged Vorthon vessels, while Merdan submarines received the same expert care as Kethavar fighters. Now that neutrality was ending and the galaxy would have to find new ways to maintain their fleets, another transmission arrived from Dr. Elena Rodriguez on Luna Station, where she continued to monitor the deteriorating galactic situation. Elena had become the unofficial keeper of humanity's collective knowledge about alien civilizations, and her reports helped Earth's leadership understand how quickly things were falling apart. "Among the stars, the Yalani are finished," Elena reported with sadness in her voice. "Their last convoy was destroyed 3 days ago by Korath raiders, and their homeworld has gone silent. Intelligence suggests their entire population has been enslaved to work in Korath weapon factories. A peaceful species that never hurt anyone has been wiped out because no one was willing to protect them." Alex felt anger rise in his chest like fire. The Yalani had been friends to humanity for decades, and their art and music had enriched human culture in countless ways. They had sent beautiful gifts to Earth and invited human artists to study in their academies. Now they were gone forever because the Galactic Council had decided that humans were unfit for leadership roles. The communication board lit up with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Desperate pleas for help arrived every hour from species that had once voted against human equality. The Skaven begged for military assistance as Korath forces approached their border systems. The Silicon Lords offered massive payments for human mercenary services. Even the proud Luminari energy beings had humbled themselves enough to request human aid in evacuating their civilian populations. Alex read each message and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. These same species had sat in judgment of humanity just 1 year ago and declared that humans were useful only as soldiers and nothing more. They had praised human courage while denying human intelligence. They had benefited from human sacrifice while refusing human partnership. Now they wanted that protection back, but the price had gone far beyond what any of them were willing to pay. Admiral Barnes appeared on the main communication channel from her office in the rebuilt NORAD complex beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her face showed the strain of watching galactic civilization collapse while maintaining humanity's policy of non-interference. She had become the most hated and feared figure in the galaxy simply by doing exactly what the aliens had asked for when they voted to keep humans in their place. "Any change in the strategic situation?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "The Korath are accelerating their advance," Alex reported. "Intelligence estimates they'll reach the core worlds within 6 months at their current rate of expansion. The Council is holding emergency sessions, but they can't agree on any unified response. Each species is more concerned with protecting their own territory than mounting a coordinated defense." Admiral Barnes nodded as if she had expected nothing else. "What about the requests for assistance? 47 new pleas for help in the last 24 hours. The offers are getting more desperate. The Vorthon Empire is promising us complete autonomy over 3 star systems if we'll help defend their capital world. The Murdan are offering to recognize Earth as the official protector of all aquatic worlds in their collective. Our response remains the same," Barnes said firmly. "The Galactic Council voted that humans were unfit for leadership and too aggressive for civilized society. We're simply proving them right by staying out of their affairs." Alex understood the logic, but he also understood the cost. Every day brought news of another world falling to Korath aggression, or another species going extinct because no one was strong enough to protect them. The galaxy that humans had served faithfully for 30 years was dying before their eyes, and humanity was choosing to let it happen. The choice had been made in a council chamber 1 year ago when 49 alien species decided that humans deserved servitude instead of partnership. Now those same species were learning that sometimes servants were the only thing standing between civilization and chaos. The lesson was written in blood across a dozen star systems, and the education was far from over. 2 years after humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, the unthinkable had happened, and Captain Susan Blake watched it unfold from the bridge of the reconnaissance vessel UES Pathfinder. The ship hung in the outer darkness of the Nexus system, where the once mighty Council station was under siege by Korath forces that had grown beyond anyone's worst nightmares. What had started as regional expansion had become galactic conquest, and now the heart of interstellar civilization was dying before her eyes. The Korath fleet surrounding Nexus Prime numbered over 200 ships, including captured vessels from a dozen different species. Warlord Gethkar had declared himself Emperor of the Eastern Spiral, and his forces controlled 43 star systems, with more falling every week. The Council station that had once been protected by the combined fleets of 50 species now cowered behind failing energy shields, while Korath dreadnoughts pounded its defenses with weapons that had been reverse-engineered from human designs. Navigation. Officer Tony Garcia looked up from his scanner, readings with disgust written across his face. "The Korath are using modified human torpedo designs, Captain. Looks like they pulled the specifications from captured Council ships and improved on them. Those weapons were never meant to be used against the people we gave them to protect." Susan nodded grimly and watched the tactical display show Korath forces methodically dismantling the station's outer defensive rings. The irony was bitter beyond measure. Humans had provided those defensive systems to protect the Council from exactly this kind of attack. Now humanity's own technology was being used to destroy the civilization that had rejected human partnership in favor of human servitude. The communication board crackled with desperate transmissions from the dying station. Council representatives who had once voted against human equality were now begging for salvation that would never come. Ambassador Karthek's crystal voice was barely recognizable through the static and terror as he broadcast final appeals to any species that might still be listening. "This is the Galactic Council calling all free worlds." Karthek's transmission echoed across space. "Nexus Prime is under direct assault by Korath forces. We require immediate military assistance. Our defensive systems are failing and civilian evacuation is impossible. Any species capable of rendering aid, please respond immediately." Susan listened to the plea and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. 2 years ago, that same ambassador had dismissed humanity as useful soldiers who lacked the sophistication for true leadership. He had praised human military effectiveness while denying human intelligence and wisdom. Now he was learning the difference between having human soldiers under his command and facing human-trained enemies without any protection at all. Priority message arrived from Earth, where President Rachel Morrison was addressing an emergency session of the Solar Congress. "Rachel, was Captain Jake Morrison's younger sister, and she had inherited his determination along with his unwillingness to forgive insults to human dignity. The holographic display behind her showed the galactic situation in stark detail, with red zones marking Korath territory, yellow areas indicating disputed space, and an ever-shrinking cluster of green representing the last free worlds. 3 separate delegations have approached us this week, President Morrison reported to the assembled representatives of human space. The Zilani are offering us full partnership with complete voting rights if we return to active service. The Vorthan Empire promises equal status in all council deliberations and shared leadership of military operations. The Murdan have even offered to withdraw from council leadership entirely and recognize Earth as the primary authority for galactic security. The chamber erupted in bitter laughter as human representatives from Mars, Luna, and the outer colonies expressed their feelings about these desperate offers. Susan could understand their anger. These same aliens had spent 30 years treating humans like hired muscle, while taking credit for the peace that human blood had purchased. They had voted unanimously that humans were unfit for partnership while demanding unlimited human sacrifice to protect their comfortable lives. Senator Chris Hamilton from the Mars colonies stood to address the assembly, 2 years too late for apologies and 30 years too late for respect. They had 3 decades to treat us as equals and chose to treat us as servants instead. Now they want us to save them from the consequences of their own arrogance. But not everyone in human space agreed with continued isolation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez appeared on the communication network from her research station on Luna, where she had been tracking the broader implications of galactic collapse. Her scientific mind understood patterns and consequences better than most, and what she saw in the data terrified her more than any Korath fleet. If the Council falls completely and the Korath model spreads, we're looking at a galactic dark age, Elena warned the assembly. Civilization took thousands of years to build, and it's being destroyed in months. Eventually, the chaos will reach our borders, too. We can't remain isolated forever while barbarism spreads across the stars. The debate that followed revealed the deep divisions within humanity about their proper response to galactic crisis. Some argued for intervention based on moral obligation to protect innocent civilians who had played no role in the Council's decisions. Others demanded that the aliens who had rejected human partnership should face the full consequences of their choice without any hope of rescue. Admiral Barnes appeared on the main communication channel from her command center beneath NORAD, where she monitored the collapse of everything humans had spent 30 years building. Her face showed the weight of watching civilizations die while maintaining a policy of non-interference that went against every human instinct to protect the innocent and fight injustice. The vote was close. Barnes reported after the Solar Congress finished their deliberations. 55% in favor of maintaining our withdrawal policy. 45% wanted to intervene despite everything the Council has done to us. Humanity remains divided, but the decision stands. We will not return to serve masters who see us as nothing more than useful animals. Susan understood the logic behind the vote, but she also understood what it meant for the galaxy. The Korath would continue their expansion until they controlled every inhabited system, or until they were stopped by force. With the Council military shattered and no species willing to sacrifice their own forces for strangers, nothing stood between Emperor Gethkar and total galactic domination except the vast distances between stars. The Pathfinder's sensors detected another explosion from Nexus Prime as more of the station's defensive systems failed under Korath bombardment. Soon the heart of galactic civilization would be nothing but wreckage and scattered debris floating in the void. The species that had once sat in judgment of humanity would be dead or enslaved while their conquerors prepared for the next phase of expansion. Susan ordered her ship to begin the long journey back to Sol system, where humanity waited in isolation while the galaxy burned. The age of human service to ungrateful masters was over, and the age of consequences had begun. What came next would depend on how long it took the Korath to turn their attention toward the one species that had always been their most dangerous enemy. When that day came, humanity would face their former allies as enemies armed with human technology and driven by human-trained tactics. The galaxy had chosen chaos over partnership, and now everyone would live with the results of that choice. 3 years after humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, the impossible had become reality. and Lieutenant Commander Ryan Phillips sat in the communication center on Titan, watching the final death of galactic civilization. The Korath Empire now controlled over 300 star systems, and Emperor Gethkar had achieved what no conqueror in galactic history had ever managed. The surrender broadcast from the ruins of Nexus Prime had ended 30,000 years of interstellar cooperation and left the galaxy under the rule of a single brutal species that understood only conquest and domination. The last transmission from Ambassador Karthek still echoed in Ryan's memory like the final cry of a dying animal. The Zilani's crystal form had been cracked and darkened by stress fractures as he spoke the words that officially dissolved the Galactic Council and recognized Korath's sovereignty over all former Council territories. Within hours of that broadcast, the systematic slaughter of Council leadership had begun, and the galaxy's oldest civilizations started their march toward extinction. Ryan's monitoring equipment picked up scattered transmissions from resistance cells hiding in asteroid fields and dead systems across the galaxy. Former Council species broadcast desperate messages into the void, hoping against hope that someone would hear and someone would help. Most of the signals were cut short by Korath jamming systems, but enough got through to paint a picture of horror that made Ryan's stomach turn with disgust and rage. The Yolani were gone completely, with their entire population enslaved in Korath weapon factories. The peaceful Skaven had retreated to their homeworld and activated defense systems that had not been used for 1,000 years. The Luminari energy beings were slowly being harvested for power by Korath energy drains that left them as empty husks drifting through space. Species that had survived for millions of years were being wiped out in months by an empire that saw all other life as either useful slaves or obstacles to be eliminated. A priority alert flashed on Ryan's communication board, and he opened the channel to receive what would become the most important transmission in human history. The signal was weak and heavily encrypted, but Ryan recognized the quantum signature as belonging to Dr. Yal Esh, a Zilani scientist who had once worked alongside human researchers on joint projects. Her voice was barely recognizable through the static and terror that made every word sound like a death rattle. "Please, if anyone receives this transmission, the Korath fleet is moving towards Sol system," Dr. Yalesh gasped, between what sounded like explosions in the background. "They have accessed the old Council databases, and they know where Earth is located. They know how strong humanity was, and they consider you their greatest threat. Emperor Gethkar is bringing his entire armada to ensure that humans never rise again to challenge Korath rule." The transmission ended in a burst of static that probably meant Dr. Yalesh was dead, along with everyone else who might have helped humanity prepare for what was coming. Ryan immediately forwarded the message to Earth, and then began tracking long-range sensor networks for any sign of Korath movement toward human space. What he found made his blood run cold with fear and anticipation. The largest fleet in galactic history was indeed moving toward Sol system. 300 warships, including captured vessels from every major species in the galaxy, were accelerating toward Earth under the personal command of Emperor Gethkar himself. Intelligence reports suggested that the Korath leader wanted to finish what the Galactic Council had started by ensuring that humanity could never again rise to challenge his empire. Admiral Barnes stood in the war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains and watched holographic displays show the approaching enemy fleet. Around her, the greatest military minds in human space studied tactical projections and battle plans, while the fate of both humanity and galactic civilization hung in the balance. For 3 years, they had watched the galaxy burn while preparing for exactly this moment, when the fires would finally reach Earth. The quantum communication channels that had been silent for 3 years suddenly came alive with transmissions from across the galaxy. Dozens of species hiding in forgotten systems and abandoned worlds risked exposure to send warning messages about Korath movements and tactical information. Former enemies offered desperate alliances while old friends begged for forgiveness and a chance to fight alongside humanity against their common destroyer. President Rachel Morrison addressed the Solar Congress one final time before the invasion fleet arrived at Earth's doorstep. Behind her, the holographic displays showed defensive preparations that had been 3 years in the making, while humanity learned from every battle and every defeat that had occurred since their withdrawal from galactic affairs. 3 years ago, the Galactic Council decided they didn't need us, President Morrison said to the assembled representatives of human space. They discovered their mistake too late to save themselves. Now the Karath come to ensure we can never rise again and never rebuild what was lost. But they have made one critical error in their planning. She paused and looked out at the faces of people who represented 100 human worlds and colonies scattered across Sol system. They think they're facing the same species that walked away 3 years ago. They don't understand that humans only grow stronger in isolation. They don't realize that we've spent these 3 years not grieving for the galaxy, but preparing for this exact moment. The vote was unanimous for the first time in decades. Humanity would fight, and they would show the galaxy what 3 years of preparation had accomplished. The Korath fleet entered the outer solar system expecting to find the same human forces that had served the Council as peacekeepers and soldiers. Instead, they found something that no intelligence report could have prepared them for. Earth's new defense grid activated and revealed weapons technologies that made the old human fleet look like toys. The asteroid belt itself began to move as hidden facilities came online and defensive systems that spanned the entire solar system powered up for the first time. Lunar shipyards released vessels whose designs incorporated lessons learned from 3 years of studying galactic warfare, while Mars unveiled planetary defense systems that could destroy entire fleets. Admiral Barnes opened a communication channel to all galactic frequencies for the first time since leaving the Council chamber 3 years ago. Her message reached every surviving ship, every hidden colony, and every species still clinging to freedom in the dark corners of space. "This is Admiral Barnes of the Solar Defense Force," she announced to the galaxy. "To those who remember friendship, you are welcome here. To those who bring war, you will find something you have never faced before. Humans who have had 3 years to prepare, humans who have nothing left to lose, and humans who remember every species that stood silent while the galaxy burned." The final line of her transmission echoed across space and reached even the Korath flagship, where Emperor Gethkar was preparing for what he thought would be an easy victory. "The Galactic Council feared to treat us as equals," Admiral Barnes said as Earth's defenses came fully online. "Today, Emperor Gethkar, you learn why that fear was justified. The age of human mercy had ended, and the age of human justice was about to begin.